Hello and welcome to the Blender Survival Guide number 11. My name is Paolo and I'll be your guide today. Today we are going to see several interesting techniques on how to add the holy grail of lighting, that is volumetric lights. And here is an example from one of the episodes of Firefly. Great show, by the way, great show. Oh, Fox, if you're listening, we need more of this. Bring Firefly back. Anyway, those beams of light coming through those holes, in that case, are caused by spotlights. As you can see, they're diverging very, very dramatically. But either in an artificial setup or in natural lighting, when the sun is coming through the clouds, those lights are a very dramatic effect. And so today we're going to see how to create that effect in Blender. And one word of warning first. Volumetric lights are very, very, very slow to render. So I'm going to create a quick scene, something that recreates that environment, not quite dramatically. But basically an enclosed space, some beams of light coming through and lighting our subject. So we're already with our cube, which can be used for our room. So let's just move around a little bit, and we are in the front view. So I'm gonna just lift our room, so-called room, here, and move it down a little bit. Okay. So now I need to create some sort of a window. I like to have a window here, and let's see. If I go in edit mode, now I have my cube, and I can select to not see the background geometry, so it's a little more clear, easier to visualize. Now, how do I open a portion of this? I cannot just carve a hole in there. I have to create the geometry for that. Otherwise, there is no support for the hole. So one way that we can do this is by simply pressing W, which brings up this specials menu, and select subdivide. So now we subdivided the cube, and every time we subdivide a quad, basically every face of this cube is a quad, we are basically quadrupling the number of vertices. Okay, so now we have a nice little face in this area, and I'm gonna just switch to the face select mode. Okay, so now I can select my face here. Okay, and I don't want to just open it, remove it. I want to create an opening that is a little smaller. Maybe I could use the opening in this way, but this illustrates an interesting technique. A lot of geometry modeling is done by using a technique called extrusion. And if you ever seen how pasta is made, you take the dough, you put it into a machine, you squeeze it, and there is pasta or a meat grinder. Okay. It's the same idea. You squeeze something through an opening, and that opening creates the shape. Well, extruding works by kind of moving in one direction, but avoiding this kind of distortion we see here. In Blender, very conveniently, the extrusion mechanism is started by pressing E for extrusion. So if I have this face selected and I press E, now I can create an extrusion of that face. Let me press ESC. So now I didn't move the face. Now the extrusion happened. I created this additional piece of geometry, but everything is flat together. Okay, so now I'm going to do this. I'm going to press S for scale, and I'm going to scale down that new face. And now I found a way of creating an opening inside the face, and a smaller opening, and automatically generate the geometry for that. So now I can press X, select to erase the face, and I have my opening in my room, in my building. Okay, so this is how we make windows. Now I want to have my subject inside this room, and it's going to be kind of hard because now we have all the faces in front of us. Even if I use this transparency mode, it's a little hard to place other things inside, like a camera or like our subject. So first of all, let me just exit edit mode. Okay, and I'm going to scale this object just a little bit. I don't want to scale it in all directions. If you see now, I'm scaling in X, Y, and Z. So Z being vertical, now my cube again goes below the floor, and I like to kind of avoid that. So one thing I can do is to press S for scale, and then say to Blender, scale everything but the Z direction. And I do that by pressing Shift Z, kind of negate Z. And now I can scale in all directions. And I have my, rectangular room. Good. I like that. I kind of like that. Our window has changed ratio. That's perfectly fine. If I wanted to make that window smaller, I can simply go into edit mode again, and I'm going to switch to edge select mode, and I want to select this edge here, this opening. Now, one of the most important operations you can do in 3D modeling ever is selecting. Selecting is such a crucial operation because selecting basically allows you to find the area, the subset of vertices, of edges, or faces on which you want to perform an operation. And this happens over and over and over again. Now, having an efficient, optimized way of selecting portions of the object is absolutely important. And that's why Blender has some of the best selection modes available in the industry. And, they're very easy to use once you know where they are. So if I want to select an edge, as usual, I right-click on the edge. I can shift right-click and select all these edges. But there is an easier way. I can simply Alt right-click on an edge, and Blender will select the entire loop, which makes it very easy now to edit by pressing S for scale and then scale it down. So now I have a smaller opening. See how easy it is? So now we have a normally sized window in a cube that represents our room. Press Tab again. We exit edit mode. Now I want to introduce this easy way of looking through walls. We've seen it before. It's just pressing the Z key. We can switch to wireframe mode. And now our cursor is right there. So that's exactly where I want it. Okay, let's place our subject. We don't need to get any fancy. We can just use our mascot, the Blender mascot, Suzanne. So Shift A, Mesh, Monkey. And now we have our monkey head in a room. Evidently the monkey head is very big. So let's make this room even bigger. S, Shift Z. There you go. Now we take our monkey head, we move it here and here. And maybe we can scale it down a little bit. Okay. What if I wanted to see the monkey head in a normal shading and this room in wireframe? All right. So let's switch back to the normal draw type, which is solid. And now, of course, we have the walls in front of us. So right-click on the cube, and we're going to click on the object panel here. In the object panel, we have here our draw tab, and the draw type right now is on shaded. Well, let's just turn into wire. And now we have our room in wire mode, and the rest based on the main draw style. Okay. Now what I like to do is to change our camera point of view, because right now our camera shows the scene from outside and I want the camera inside. So let's move the camera and move it here, move it here. Let's switch to the right view. We can bring the camera down and rotate with R. Now we are looking at the subject. Again, the orientation of the axis of the translation manipulator on the camera, the orientation is now right. So we're going to just use the local orientation, so I can move the camera more comfortably. Okay. And definitely I wanted to bring it down and rotate it up on the x-axis. Rotate R, X. Not what I wanted. So let's try this. In the camera perspective view, Shift F. Okay, much better. And we just move the mouse. We just, don't click, you just move. Okay. And I want to move it a little bit on this side and here, and maybe back a little more. Okay. It doesn't matter, the camera is intersecting the wall. That is where 3D gives us a little more flexibility. In a normal set, in a movie set, we would need to actually open a hole in the wall, and that's how it's normally done. All right, my monkey head here is a little too low. So we're going to bring it up a little bit and rotate it so that it's realistically touching the floor. I hope so. Okay, that looks positioned right. Okay, so now we have our scene set up correctly. Maybe I can just swing the camera a little bit on the up direction. There you go. All right, now I'd like to have volumetric lights shining through my window here. Now, if we look back at the scene from Firefly, we see that there are some round holes in those panels, about 4 or 5 holes, and I'd like to recreate that situation. So I'm gonna just create a panel that goes in front of this window and have some holes in it. Now I'd like to start with a simple plane, so let me just switch it to a different layer so we can just clear this scene. We don't see the rest, we can just focus on our panel. So Shift A, Mesh, Plane. We have our plane. Now again, you cannot carve holes in a plane. You have to do something a little different. What I like to do here is to work on a primitive hole. So we're going to just work on one single hole and then multiply, replicate that a few times. So as we see in the scene, basically we need to have some sort of a surface with a hole carved in it. Now I cannot simply say, go to edit mode and select the face mode and click on this face and say, hey, delete the faces, because the entire plane goes away. I mean, the plane is one face. If you remove the face, it's gone. What I like to do is to basically keep the frame, the so-called frame, and remove just the surface. And on top of that, I need to do a few other things to make the whole work. Have faith, follow what I'm going to show you. So first of all, let's press again W and subdivide. Now we have subdivided our plane into 4 polygons, okay? Let's switch to vertex select mode, and the manipulator right now is really getting in the way, and that's the reason why you can disable it. So I'm going to disable it. Now we can still move things around, but I don't have those 2 big arrows in my screen. Let me deselect everything, pressing A, and then I right click in the middle where there is a vertex. I can move away my cursor and you see that there is a vertex in there, and there's also this circle which is symbolizing the center of my object. So now I have the center vertex selected. You can see that there is this kind of a faded selection that is basically saying, look, this is your center of your selection, everything else is not selected. Now if I right click on this vertex, you see that there is exactly the same effect. Okay, so right click in the center vertex, press X for erase, and select vertices. So now we have completely erased the surface, but we still have the so-called frame and we still have the vertices. Now this is not a really good polygon because normally Blender doesn't allow you to work with other polygon shapes by triangles and quads. And here we have several vertices, more than 4. But it's okay, no problem, no reason to panic. So let's press Shift C and have the cursor back in the center. And what I'm going to do here is to press Shift A and select Circle. I want to create a circle center inside our square. Now it's not a plane anymore, it's some sort of a square. So let's select Circle. Blender goes all wild in the configuration, says, hey, I'm going to give you 32 vertices. No. We just need 8. That's plenty. We just need a little hole. We don't need to get too detailed. 8 will be just fine. And we press OK. Don't select fill. We want a hole. We don't want a little disc. So press OK. Now we have our little circle, which is not really a circle, but it's an approximation of a circle. Let's scale it down quite a bit, like this. Now, if I could only have a surface all around this area, inside this area here, and not here, I will have my hole. Great. Well, Blender allows you to erase vertices, edges, and faces, but also has very convenient tools to do the opposite, to create new edges. Well, how you do that? Before I can create the face of the polygon, I have to create my edges. So right now I have 2 separate pieces of geometry. I can right-click on this vertex and then shift or right-click on this. Now we have these 2 vertices selected. If I press F, Blender will join them, creating an edge. See? Isn't that beautiful? Okay, so now I'm going to right-click on this vertex, shift or right-click on this vertex, and press F again. Ooh. Well, this is 1, 2, 3, and 4. This could be a quad. Let's remember that and continue. Click, actually, right-click, shift right-click, F, right click, shift right click, F, right click, shift right click, F, and so on. Beautiful. Isn't that great? All right. So now I'm going to do this. I'm going to switch to edge select mode, right click on the edge, shift right click on this edge, and press F. And Blender will create a face. And we continue. And we continue. And in just a few clicks, we have created the geometry for our hole in the wall, literally. Okay. There you have it. But at this point, we remember that we want to create a panel with several holes. So one is not enough. Fair enough. Let's switch to object mode. Okay. And I'm going to introduce another concept, that is the idea of modifiers. Modifiers are very, very powerful tools. You can find them in the editing button. And the idea here is that I want to replicate this structure, like, 2 times horizontally and 2 times vertically. Now, I could press Shift D and duplicate and then try to join them together, align them together. There is an easier way than that. And that is by using modifiers. So I have my object selected. Here in the editing buttons, I have the modifiers tab. Now, if I click on the button here, add modifier, Blender will give me the list of all these really, really interesting things. There is a lot of them. They do amazing things, and we're going to see how they work during the Blender survival guide. But for now, we want to concentrate on creating an array. An array is basically a list. Array works for our list of replicated objects. So I press array, and already it starts working pretty well. All right, let's see, what is this? What's happening? Okay, when I created the modifier, I get this new tab here, this new panel. And here I have the name of my modifier. Here I have some buttons that tell me when the modifier is applied. So it's applied during rendering, it's applied during the interactive display. See, I can enable, disable it, and it's applied during editing. So that means basically that the modifier is active during object mode and during edit mode. Fixed count. Well, I can create different types of arrays. One is a fixed count, one is fixed length, and the other is through fixed length that fits a curve. Now, let's keep things simple. You know my philosophy, one thing at a time. And we start with our fixed count. 2 is perfectly fine, but just for the sake of the argument, the sake of the demonstration, you can see that I can create any number of replicants. Okay, so right now we just need 2. I can just enter the number right there. And I need to have 2 also vertically. So I can create a relative offset on the X one time and the Y one time. That is really not what that means. What this means is that you have the offset is 1 unit, 1 Blender unit on the X axis and on the Y axis. So you can create all kind of interesting permutations. But if you wanted to create an array that spans horizontally and vertically, how do you do that? Okay, let's remove this. Back to the horizontal. There is no law in Blender that says you can have only one instance of a modifier. There is nothing like that. In fact, you can have multiple instances or multiple copies, if you want, of the same modifier. I can say, hey, I want to add a modifier, or I can copy this modifier, duplicates this modifier in the stack. Copy, and now it says, oh wow, we have 4 of those because we have an array modifier here and an array modifier here. This second modifier is a copy of the first. Not what I wanted. Well, it's easy to change. We press 0 in this field, basically saying, hey, we are now moving in the x-axis, but we are moving in the y-axis. Now, why the modifier works with the y in the vertical direction, don't ask me, because we spent so much time trying to understand that Blender works with the z-axis up. The modifier seems to be working with the y-axis up. My guess is that because this is a bidimensional entity, it's a plane, it doesn't have a third dimension, Blender reverts to XY from the standard Cartesian orientation where Y is the vertical axis. It doesn't matter. If one doesn't work, you try the other. Let's move on. So now we finally have our panel with 4 holes. Now, the one thing I don't like about this is this. I don't like holes that are exactly the same. I like to create some sort of a randomness to it. But the problem is this. If I go to edit mode, as you can see, basically Blender is saying, hey, there is really one element in this object. All the others are basically copies. And this is very nice. This is important that we can see in this way. Now I can select my edge select mode, and I can again press Alt or Option on the Mac, right click, and now I have my circle selected, and I can press S and change the size. Now sometimes you want to achieve this, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you want to have every circle independent. Well, in order to make this work, we have to basically apply the modifier. When you apply the modifier, you basically say to Blender, look, I'm okay with this configuration, just bake it, make it permanent. Don't make it a dynamic calculation, really create the geometry for that shape. And so we exit edit mode and we go back to our array and we start from the top. When you apply, you have to start from the top modifier going down the list and say apply. Now let's see what happened. Oh, now we have applied the horizontal modifier, and I can select my element here by pressing L. L means select all the linked elements. So if I press L with my cursor on an edge, it will select all the elements that are linked. But wait a second, why it didn't select this guy here? What's going on? Let me press G to grab this and move it. Oh, bummer. I really wanted this shape to be one single shape, not 2 different squares with a hole in it. We missed something. Now, I could fix this. I have the power. But I wanted to show you a easier way. So let's press ESC. And let's exit edit mode. And let's see if our undo works. There you go. Needed to press it a couple of times. Okay, so this is our relative offset in the X direction. And when I applied it, it did create two copies, an additional copy, oriented correctly, but separate. What I can do here is to click on Merge. And Merge basically merges all the duplicates together in a single entity. Let's try again now. Merge and apply. Let's switch to edit mode. If I press A to deselect everything and L to select everything linked, now we see that indeed we have one single object. Good. So if I click on, for example, the vertex select mode, press A, and I select this vertex and I move it around, well, we see it affects all the polygons connected to it, and they're all connected at this point here. Great! So let's repeat the experience. I'm having fun with this. We have our modifier here in the vertical direction. Click on Merge, Apply, and Tab to edit mode. And now I right-click on this vertex, and whoo, look at this. Fantastic. So now what I can do is to switch to Edge Select mode, and Alt right-click on this circle and make it smaller. And then I can right-click with an Alt on this one and make it a little larger. And I can make this smaller. And this is smaller a little bit. There you go. And now we have a panel that can work for our application. You know what? It's time to save this scene. File, save, and we're gonna call this BSG 11. Save. There you go. You know, I'm looking at this, and there is still something that is bothering me, and I know what it is. All these holes are exactly aligned together, and that kind of ruins the effect. So now that we have the geometry created as a full geometry, we can fix that very easily. So let's get our selection mode again to edge, and I like to move this. Let's move this guy here, and we're gonna press G, and we can just place it anywhere we want. Same thing for this guy, and continue this way, and here it is. Now we have something that kind of resembles the scene in Firefly. And I just realized that we are running out of time and there is still a lot to do. So I'm gonna stop right now, and I'll see you next week. Don't miss the second part of this glorious tutorial. As usual, my name is Paolo Ciccone. Happy blendering!